No. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. I am going to go and get smashed at the bar later. I will see you all later at reception. I jest. I wouldn't pass up the opportunity to talk ad nauseum about a topic that only I and a handful of terminally online people plus artists have ever cared about. So gather children, and I do mean literal children, I see you out there attacking each other, gather round and allow this lone idiot to attempt to impart some perspective onto your tiny, precious little noggins. And do we notice the new stills, everyone? No? They look exactly the same? It's just me? I'm the only one who cares? Okay, let's just get on with the video. Cool, thank you. Let's get on with it. Now, some house cleaning before we dive into things. First and foremost, I won't be responding to any one creator, video, tweet, thread, yada 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 in this video here. I didn't start writing this in response to someone saying something dumb. I made it in response to a lot of people saying a lot of dumb things. I started writing this because I thought the topic was genuinely worth discussing and could be an interesting source of debate. Then I found out that apparently it's actually a hot topic in the art community circles, and people were wondering if I was coming here to call out certain creators for certain takes, which I am just categorically not. So no, I'm not going to be naming and shaming anyone here. If you think this video is directed towards you, that's cool. That probably means you have some thoughts of your own to share, and I'm absolutely down to talk about opposing opinions with you, and I hope some of my points might actually reach you too. But I am not coming for you. I am sorry to disappoint you, you tea-guzzling Gen Z kiddos. And as for the rest of you, my sweet babadoodles, you know what I'm about to say. No bothering, harassing, or pestering anyone else, creator, audience member, or otherwise. If I hear any of you doing so, I will salt your fields, burn your crops, and take your wife out for a nice night of respectful romancing. Which you should also be doing, you lazy bum. Take the lovely lady out for dinner once in a while, or I'm coming for your girl. With that, let us begin. The base argument and types of aging up. So for the sake of keeping everyone up to speed and on the same page, let me break down the base arguments that are going on here. First and foremost, what is the source of this debate? In this instance, we'll examine the ethics, morality, and potential perversion of aging up fictional characters. If you're amazed that somehow this discourse, which I consider at most to be a topic of curious discussion and personal reflection, has become so vitriolic, know that you are not alone on this sinking ship. Pun not intended, except definitely intended. Specifically in this video, we're talking about aging up characters for the purpose of romancing or sexualizing them, usually with a heavier focus on the plainly erotic aspects of doing so. This includes things like out-and-out 18+ content, you know what I'm talking about, don't come for me, Susan. Saucy fanfictions, formerly known as limes or lemons by decrepit old coots like me, fan art, shipping both with OCs and other canon characters, and other ostensibly adult scenarios. You know I didn't write this script entirely alone because the word ostensibly is in here. Damn it, Barbara! Sorry. Anyway, of course, we should also acknowledge that sometimes characters are aged up so they can be used for more mature stories and themes that aren't sexual in nature. Think things like complex depictions of mental health, war, death, violence, or generalized dark themes. Just coming-of-age stories most of the time. But generally speaking, these forms of art and fiction aren't targets of this discussion, so I'm just making a note of them here because, yeah, I can imagine people that don't like seeing characters aged up for sex also can't be massively fond of doing it in order to expose them to other darker adult situations that don't surround smut. Or maybe they don't care and we're all just in a sea of tunnel vision arguments against porn. Take your pick, really. Pearl clutching or hypocrisy, two of the internet's favorite pastimes. Now that we have the scope of our discussion, let's take a look at the opposition. I'd like to start here because the opposition is easily the most vocal side of the discourse that I've encountered in the wild. I'm going to be doing my best to present the notable arguments as charitably as possible. Optimal word there being try on that one. So, objection the first.
I don't like people aging up characters to suit adult themes. It makes me uncomfortable and icky.
Sorry, I know that we just said we'd be charitable, but to be honest, this seems to be the core sentiment fueling a lot of these other objections. I can't beautify it much more than this. Don't worry, the other three will have a bit more substance to them. Objection the second.
Aging up characters specifically to use them for sexual situations is just a thinly veiled effort to hide the fact you are sexualizing minors for your own fetishes. If you just say they're older without changing them visually or their environment, usually a school setting, then it's not really aging them up and it's just a workaround.
Objection the third.
This is dangerous to minors as it can encourage people to think that it's normal to sexualize fictional minors and therefore real minors, putting them into harm's way.
Objection the fourth.
If you're so interested in a minor character to begin with that you would age them up just to justify indulging in sexual content with them, then you must be attracted to a minor character in the first place and therefore, you know.
I can't say the P word just yet or YouTube is going to put me down like Old Yeller, but yeah, I think we all know what I'm alluding to with this one here. Alright, I think that is a simple enough summary of the arguments I've seen cropping up frequently in this debate. Now let's take violent delight in dismantling them. Objection the first, take two. So let's start with the obvious one with an obvious rebuttal. It is none of your business how someone interprets, interacts, and portrays a fictional character within their own fan works and headcanons. If you don't like it, and I cannot believe I am legitimately saying this, but I am, just walk away. Fan creations, by and large, have no impact on the original creation and not created to the same wide audience as the original work. The source material is not changed, lessened, or sullied by the experience of fan recreations and reimaginings. The only time I can think of a fan sort of community making massive impacts on this source material would be Sonic, which is a whole other can of worms. I am just going to put a link to Super EyePatch Wolf's video on Sonic on the internet and leave it at that. It's very interesting, but also scary. Just, yep, let's not get into it. Regardless, if an AU, headcanon, or interpretation is not to your taste, well, guess what, Buttercup? You can make your own, or just stick to the source material. It's still there. It's as simple as that. With all of that said, it's also no one else's business to be telling you that you're wrong for disliking characters being aged up. Shockingly, that's actually not what I'm here to do today. If it makes you feel gross or uncomfortable, that's a personal stance that is perfectly valid to have, and if that's where your engagement ends with this topic, good for you! You can leave, it's over, you've won the prize, you've finished this discourse, be free. There's no harm in finding, well, anything disgusting to you personally. I personally cannot stand those filthy, filthy things you call watermelons. But that's personal to me and me alone. I can't force my dislike for that onto others and make moral judgments on them or demand they change their behaviors to suit my melon-hating whims. My only advice to people in this particular camp would be, don't confuse your personal principles regarding any topic as objective moral absolutes. There is no harm in simply saying,
Hey, I don't like this thing, so I don't engage with it. Please respect that.
Taking the next step to become the moral arbiter of others is where people begin to overstep. Having your own set of values as an ethical content consumer should not translate to,
this is disgusting, so anyone that engages with it, you're a bad person or literally a criminal for doing so.
Please recognize the difference between these two statements. Alright, point one in the bag. Objection the second, take two. Now this one actually has a bit more of a backbone to it, and I'll be returning to the idea of what satisfactorily constitutes aging up a character later in this video. I agree that if someone is depicting minors in the exact same way as they are depicted in the source material and just slapping an 18+ label in the tags or description, that's not really aging up, it's a bait and switch. This is much easier to identify in visual works, but it gets a little harder to pass in fanfiction, and not everyone can recognize this tactic at a glance in written works. A common example of the bait and switch in written work would be they're still attending high school. For a couple of well-known examples of this, look to Hogwarts or countless anime high schools like My Hero Academia. However, where this point becomes a bit muddled is when the characters are in their late teens. Depending on how much of an age up they go through, it's not always going to be a drastic change. Taking a 17-year-old and aging them up to 18 isn't going to suddenly change their entire visual appearance, behavioral patterns, or life situation. Now, my personal advice to anyone in this boat would be to simply age them up further. In for a penny, in for a pound, make that fucker a 50-year-old, I don't know. Ask yourself if you're consciously exploiting a technicality and whether or not this is a good faith attempt to depict these characters in an ethical way. The best way to avoid scrutiny for this practice is to make it as explicitly clear as possible that this character is no longer a teenager, legal or otherwise. I understand that for some artists, specifically young and learning artists, again, put a pin in that, we'll come back to that nuance soon enough, can struggle with depicting age, especially in anime styles. So if you really want to make sure they appear older, then context matters. Are they working a full-time job? Are they out of school, in college or university, married, divorced maybe? Where are they at in life? If you don't have the skills to visually display on their face and body their maturity, then their life situation and surroundings will go a long way to get the idea across. That's just my bit of advice to all of you baby artists that don't want to get caught in the crossfire for your Naruto fan art or whatever. Objection the third, take two. I won't be beating around the bush on this one. I'm sorry, but this particular point falls flat for me. Unless we go back to point 2 and say the artist had drawn, let's say, the Powerpuff Girls with absolutely no visual changes from the show, then there's no possible way this could be harmful to minors in real life. Keeping in mind, we are also still talking about cartoons, and if you tell me the Powerpuff Girls look like literal minors in real life, I don't want to see what the Powerpuff Girls look like in real life. Fuck, that's horrifying. Can you imagine their proportions? I'm sorry, I got off topic there. Honestly, I'd argue what's harmful to minors in this situation is the scrutiny and attack of outsiders telling them that they're doing something wrong or dangerous or disgusting by shipping themselves with their senpai or whatever. This is more or less puritanizing. And again, you know Barbara wrote this because the word puritanizing is in it. This is more or less puritanizing, and once again falls into the foxhole of moral. You can't put puritanizing and moral arbitering in the same sentence and not expect me to cry. Fuck. This is more or less puritanizing, and once again falls into the foxhole of moral arbitering. I've never seen a convincing argument that any one fan work has unconsciously encouraged the abuse of minors through aged up AU or headcanon, though I do invite people to point me towards instances of such. If they exist, it will be horrifying, but I will have learned something, maybe. I put it to you that it would be near impossible to unconsciously promote sexualization of minors through this type of AU, and you'd be hard-pressed to even find a conscious or malicious effort to do so in age-up content. I would also like to note at this point that I am not talking about sites like Pornhub or Rule 34, whatever number that is. I am specifically talking about fan content in fan spaces like fanfiction.net, Archive of Our Own, Tumblr, Twitter. Is that a fan space? Whatever, you get the idea. I'm not talking about out-and-out porn. Please don't tell me about it. I am aware of its existence. I don't want to think about it. Let's move on. I would also argue it is ludicrous to suggest that any media can be held solely responsible for the actions of an individual. The most common examples of this extreme mentality that jump to mind is blaming video games on gun violence from teens or movies on acts of extreme violence. There have been instances throughout history where a criminal has pointed to a piece of media and says that is a thing that inspired them. But I would still put forward the idea that it is not the media that created a monster. Monsters simply find ways to be monsters. If they hadn't found that piece of media to inspire them, it would have been something else. And again, keep in mind here, I'm not defending drivel like lolicon or whatever where lampshading pedophilia is nowadays. It's late enough in the video, I can say that now, hey. I am simply putting forward the argument that media does not create monsters and cannot singularly be held responsible for the atrocities that monster may commit. I have my own personal experience giving a lecture at uni and having someone ask me if I believed the creators of Slender Man should be held responsible for that terrible incident where a girl got stabbed in the forest, and I'm just like, who would you hold responsible at that point? I'm sorry, we're getting off topic. It's a topic for another day. I will die mad about that particular interaction, but let's get back on topic. Objection the fourth, take 2. Lucky last and my personal favorite of the lot. Okay, this one I get. I can see how you've gotten from A to B here. On the face of it, there's this simplistic, understandable, albeit narrow-minded comprehension of art and fiction. I mean, I still think you're wrong, but I can see how you got here. And good for me, this is a perfect segue into my first major talking point as part of the wider discourse: adults engaging with fandoms and fictional characters. Oh boy, here we are. The thought process that planted the seeds for this video in the first place. Welcome to my domain, ladies and gentlemen. So, for this section, we're going to be talking about adults in this situation. We will be talking about minors a little later, but for right now, I'm just talking to the grandpa and grandmas of the internet. Let's first begin with what I think a lot of people are envisioning when thinking of adults engaging in fandom in this way. Someone well out of their teens sees a minor character and wants to do unseemly things to them, so they age them up as a workaround to do what they want. I am modeling this depiction of an adult engaging with the practice of aging up characters off what I've seen asserted by a few creators and audience members during this discourse. While I do think it's a pretty weak and two-dimensional example, for the sake of this argument, I'm going to engage with it all the same. Alright, adult situation 1. A much older person sees a character that is in their preteens or their early teens and wants to age them up. Right off the bat, we're getting into dicier territory, and I think it's worth discussing. For me, personally, I find the concept of aging up very young characters like, say, Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls or the Simpsons kids for the sake of porn to be highly questionable. And I know a couple of you, again, are already thinking of the Pornhub stuff, and I think in that particular instance, it's literally just a weird form of shock factor and knowing it's something that people would dislike that makes it appealing. I don't know. That's pure, I'm off script. I'm purely speculating on that one. But that aside, many spin-off shows and sequels or even episodes within their own franchise build on the ideas of what characters may get up to once they're older teens or adults. Again, some brief examples off the top of my head: Ben 10, Powerpuff Girls, and even flash-forward episodes in The Simpsons. It's a very common trope in media to explore where a character's life might lead, and I've already established that I don't put any value in the blanket argument that aging up characters for any reason is bad. Fortunately, I haven't seen many people make that particular argument, which is why I'm not harping on it specifically. Most people are focused on sex specifically, and in that instance, we do have a little bit to talk about. Let's tackle the biggest accusation first. Is it pedophilia to do this? No. Like, I am sorry, I understand this is a bit of a hot take, but it just cannot be categorized as any form of pedophilia. If it were, you just wouldn't age the character up. That sort of directly goes against the attraction to minors part of the whole paraphilia. Now, I understand the argument against this is that the fan is only using aging up as an excuse to sexualize minor characters, but here's the thing, kids. If they actually age them up, none of this "I'm actually 1,000 years old, but I just look like a child" nonsense, I'm looking at you, Fire Emblem, then they are, by all good faith considerations, no longer a child. Which means that if someone is attracted to that character, they are attracted to an adult character. Therefore, bada bing, bada boom, no paraphilia involved. Don't worry, I will circle back around to the topic of 1,000-year-old lollies and failure to visually age up a character in a meaningful way in just a bit, but for right now, we're focusing on the types of adults involved in this practice. I know that 80% of my videos are me telling you to put a pin in things, but put a pin in it. Next situation. An adult ages up a character already in their late teens to the bare minimum required to meet real-world legal requirements. Right off the bat, this becomes a grey area, because if you're aging up a character from 17 to 18, especially if the fan in question is still in their teens or early 20s themselves, then I could already care less. For me, this reminds me of people being crucified for turning 18 while dating a 17-year-old or having a 2-year age gap. But I care even less within these parameters because we aren't even discussing real people. To be clear, I don't see myself on the side of it's just a fictional character, so there's never any real-world implications. But in this particular instance, I would not equate the perceived sexualization or abuse of a real person, a real minor, to the circumstances of a fictional one. That's just a general stance on media. I wouldn't react to a murder in fiction the same way I would a murder in real life, if you understand my meaning. To try and simplify this point, I'd say that these things have a scale of severity, and anyone claiming otherwise is missing the forest for the trees here and just dying on very, very strange hills. Once again, I will come back to this point, but before you jump down my throat and twist my words to me, it's okay to sexualize minors as long as it's in fiction, which is categorically not my stance on the matter. Maybe make a double take of your favorite anime, book, or video game's treatment of a teenage character and come back to me with your thoughts. Now let's move on to the final type of adult that may be engaging in the practice of aging up characters. The nostalgic adult, or the adult that has aged up themselves. Because, shockingly, people will age beyond the fictional characters of their youth. That's just how the world works, and one day, every single one of you is gonna be in this position if you reach adulthood. Sorry to say if, I know that's dark, but we're being factual right now. Especially for the younger people that have been commenting on this topic, I understand that for you it's easy to make these hot takes now because you haven't reached the adult threshold and don't fully understand what you're talking about, but you will get there one day, and you too shall be included in this list. We will welcome you in. I assure you that you will not abruptly toss your favorite media and characters into the waste bin once you hit 18. As you may have gathered, I am as old as dust in internet years, which means that once, when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I was a child not on the internet. And you know what I did with that good chunk of wasted youth? I played Pokemon, like a lot of Pokemon. And not just that, I got myself a wee little crush on Enharmonious. Never mind that I also had a crush on Giovanni. We don't need to unpack that particular baggage today. But the point is, your girl was perfectly cringy in her preteen to early teen years, with much awful fanfiction and self-insert content being made. Granted, there is a bit of a debate nowadays about N's age, but up until yesterday, essentially, I had always thought N was 17, and in anime, being told or believing a character's age is often 80% of the battle. You can't tell me a good chunk of JoJo characters look like minors. Did you know some of the JoJo characters are still in high school? Because I didn't, and I watched the stupid show. Like, what? I'm only up to season 3. Like, don't come for me. I just got here. Regardless, to me, N has always been 17, which landed the character squarely in the older than me, but also still a minor category growing up. Works out just fine for a geeky, awkward 13 to 17-year-old, but then something unexpected happens. You age. Yeah, that's a thing, and it sucks when you realize that, yes, it is happening to you, and there is no escape from it. So one day, I am no longer 17 years old, and this character is abruptly younger than me, which is a very strange sensation in hindsight. So when you hit 18, if it crosses your mind, which it won't because you have far more pressing issues hitting adulthood than the age of a fictional green-haired twink, suddenly your childhood crush that you've written pages and pages of fanfiction about with some limes thrown in there for good measure, is suddenly younger than you. And a minor. Well now, isn't this a predicament? And here we are, in the position that I think many of you anime-loving teens will soon find yourselves in, as well as my fellow young adults. If you're in my age bracket and grew up liking anime, I can put money on you simping for different Naruto characters, most of whom were between the ages of 12 and 17, or basically any other anime that takes place in, go figure, a high school. I can name a couple of you with near unhealthy obsessions with Sasuke or like Yagami, like I see you. And now you're an adult. Years have passed, and for many of you, that fictional character, by virtue of not being fucking real, oh my god, we are talking about this so seriously for fictional characters, has not aged a day. Well, what are you to do? We grew up with stories of teenaged heroines and heroes, anime warriors, and child animal ring fighters that topple whole mafia organizations at the ripe age of like 10. When we were young ourselves, then we grow older than them. And of course, we still like them. Something we acknowledge outside of this discourse that really makes it to the table here is that fictional characters are suspended in the time that their work takes place. They aren't capable of age or growth like we are, and that doesn't stop their meaning or influence from changing us as we get older. If you're still out there simping for an old fictional fave, and hey, I've got no room to judge you on that front, my poor fan folk, what are you to do other than create older AUs and headcanons for these characters that you loved? People like to see their favorites grow and mature with them as they get older, inside or outside of their official canon, and sometimes, yeah, sex comes with that package, especially for the 20-somethings. It is a shame that we have to grow up, but that's just how the world works. Age will come for everyone in time. No one is exempt, except for your beloved fictional waifus and husbandos. So, to my young folks out there, give some thought to this because time will come for you too, and eventually you'll age beyond that anime boy or gal you secretly fancy and write lots of fanfiction about. I see you. And also, speaking to those younger whippersnappers in the audience today, this is what I call a segue. It's not good, but it's all we've got. Let's discuss this topic, keeping in mind the demographic that actually produces a good portion of this type of content, fan contributors 18 and under. Now, I understand that this is not the focus of much of this discourse, but I have seen enough 14-year-olds accusing other 14-year-olds of being deviant or engaging in illegal, immoral, or lord for fucking bid, pedophilic behavior at the ripe young age of still a goddamn minor, all for shipping characters either with their own self-inserts or other canon characters. So I am going to take some time to talk about that now. Let me first address my fellow senior citizens here today. Leave the children alone, for heaven's sake! Cutting right to the chase here, to my fellow elderlies, let the kids explore their interests in their own spaces with their own peers. The absolute most any of us ancient bastards should be engaging with this topic is to gently tell the kids to think about what they might regret or be embarrassed by in the future, and also encourage them not to engage in anything actually illegal, which, shockingly, is not writing fanfiction or drawing saucy images. It is not illegal for a child to do that. Sharing those things with other kids is where it gets a bit more dicey legally, but generally speaking, the law isn't going to crack down on kids for, well, being kids. So even then, the most that we, as adults, should do is inform them of the laws without setting out to chide them for being literal goddamn children. They're going to explore their sexuality one way or another, and it is not your fucking place to shame and shun them for trying to make sense of the world around them, you Puritan assholes. Publicly judging and lambasting children online is not going to protect them in any way, shape, or form, and pretending otherwise is self-righteous bullying bullshit. Alright, let's calm it back down. In short, a child's growth and exploration is none of your business. You should no more be engaging with it than you should be mocking or shaming them for going through the motions of growing up. Just, if they're not your kid, stay out of their business. Now that I've rightly chided my peers, kids, I implore you, don't eat your own. If you're genuinely of the mindset that another child is doing something illegal, dangerous, or bad, and you're worried for them or yourselves, take it to a trusted adult in your real lives. Not an adult you've seen online or you think you know through social media. The only time you would do something about this online is if you were bringing it to an admin that can then go on to take the appropriate measures to resolve the situation, and even then, I'd still recommend turning to your parents. If you're not sure about turning to your parents, then there's still your teachers, or if things are getting very serious, to the police. not the internet full of strangers. Like, there's almost no worse place for you to go. Like, Christ. I swear, if I see one more call-out post about a kid from another kid or get another DM asking me to expose a child for being a child, I am going to explode. Ignoring that a lot of the time, you probably won't understand a situation as well as you think you do, or with the nuance that comes with age, you could very well just be putting yourself into a situation that could bring harm to you, be that mentally, emotionally, socially, or physically, if your kids decide to duke it out like how we would back in public school days. And finally, to my youngins out there that might be nervous or ashamed or feeling some kind of way about producing this content, let me have a quick word with you too. You're young now, and you're inevitably going to fuck up. If you're older, and hell, I'll be including the 18 and 19-year-olds here because I believe you should have a bit of wiggle room as a teenager, even if you're not officially a minor anymore, you're going to make dumb decisions and do things that one day you will regret. The folly of our centralized internet is that everything comes back to haunt you. One thing that our teachers might actually be right about is once you put it out there, it's out there forever. I'm not saying this to scare you. I am saying this to tell you to be kind to yourselves and your peers. Because once you've grown up a bit, you are definitely going to look back on your cringy fanfictions and art and wonder what the fuck you were thinking. I am speaking from experience. And what you were likely thinking and trying to work out through whatever it is you made is, who am I, what is going on, and why do I feel like this? It's all very natural, and you don't need to crucify yourselves for fumbling a bit while growing up. Alright, PSA over. Everyone get out. We're going back to the other topic. Let's leave this room. We're going back to the other topic now. Now that we've covered our bases where I think people need to be minding their damn business and chill out, let's talk about where aging up characters actually doesn't work. Because believe it or not, despite everything I've said before this, there is plenty of grey area here and room to abuse my charitable view on aging up characters. We have talked about these points here and there throughout the video, but I'll spend some time explaining where I tend to start side-eyeing people for aging up characters. First and foremost, faking it. As we acknowledged earlier, there is merit in the argument that not changing anything meaningful about a character and slapping an adult label over a minor is trash. You can find plenty of examples of this on actual not safe for work sites where they just slap the everyone here is 18 plus label on things while clearly working with non-adult characters. Funnily enough though, the first example of this that leaps to mind for me is actually Yandere Dev, a video game developer. If you can call that game developing. Sorry. Remember I said at the start that it's not always sexual situations that people feel the need to age characters up for? Well, torture and murder games tend to fall into this category quite a bit. I mean, sure, you can write children into those situations. I don't think there's anything inherently immoral about depicting the fact children are not safe from the horrors of the world, but some creators like to avoid scrutiny for that sort of dark content, and so out comes the 18 plus label for every single kid in a high school in junior uniforms. Like, I'm not even mad that it's obviously visually intended to be younger teens. I'm mostly just pissed that you thought this would work. Like, fuck off, Yandere Dev. That aside, I think most of us can agree that you can more or less tell when there's been an actual good faith attempt to age up a character or work with adult characters within not safe for work content, and when a creator is simply abusing the "they're all 18 or over, I swear" disclaimer. This, I think, is where a lot of people find themselves in the case-by-case mindset for these things. Because, shockingly, most things in this world are decided case-by-case, and blanket statements tend to do more harm than good. As for the second place, where I think you can jump up and down and call it pedophilia, just not aging them up? Like at all? Let's not forget that this happens all the time. There's real content out there depicting minors in sexual situations where they don't even bother pretending to age them up because that is the point. That is the paraphilia they are deliberately channeling. And it's far more common in the source material than the fan material, which is something I think people should be far more upset about, not coming after fan artists for ships online where they try to age up a character in good faith. The answer to this problem is not to take a black and white approach to all fan works depicting these characters in adult situations, because an intrinsic part of fan work is the diverse backgrounds and motivations of its creators. And while we're on the subject of misplaced priorities, kids, loath as I am to be petty on main at all hours of the day, but I will not stop, where is this energy for the original creations? Like, if we look back at some of the fandoms where this debate has most recently been cropping up, like My Hero Academia, Naruto, Fairy Tail, just listing off these 3 anime, I'm sure anyone who's seen them can think of more than one panty shot, beach or pool fan service episode, revealing outfits, accidental boob grabs, so on and so forth. And these characters are usually in high school. These things live on strong in almost all widespread anime. I don't understand the logic of coming after a fan creator for drawing saucy fan art but giving the source material a pass for a cleavage shot. Like, I'm just not quite understanding the disconnect here. And let's not even get into how highly sexualized, like 80% of high school girls in all forms of media are. And that's not even to get into just daytime TV and how they talk about teenaged girls in general. Awful. Anyway, honestly, if teenagers having sex implied or shown in movies or TV shows is all fine and dandy, but a self-insert fanfiction is a step too far, then I don't know what to tell you other than to analyze your learned biases at this point. Look, my sweet darling Babadoodles, I'm not saying you have to kick these shows to the curb. Far from it. Anime in particular has a long and proud tradition of cramming minor characters' assets into the viewers' faces, and while I personally find this to be nasty as hell and I'd love for it to stop, I can't help but notice that a majority of the ire seems to be directed at fans of the media rather than the source material itself. How can we jump up and down screaming that it's gross and immoral to sexualize minors that have been aged up in fan content when the source material is sexualized minors that have not been aged up at all? Is it perhaps because it is far easier to attack a single, vulnerable nobody amongst your own ranks rather than focus that attention on an invulnerable, nameless, faceless corporation that could care less about your existence and also just happens to create the media you enjoy so much? I'm just saying, perhaps some self-awareness would not go amiss here, kiddos. Which brings us to the conclusion. Took us long enough to get here. While I was scripting this video, I put out a little poll on Twitter asking people what they thought of the topic, and I was genuinely surprised by the results. A quick note about my poll. I understand it's likely skewed because people that follow me tend to have similar worldviews, and also I had made a thread discussing the end situation a few weeks prior, which may have given people an indication of where my head was at. And of course, it was only a small sample, not strictly indicative of the internet at large, but I still think it's an interesting litmus test. Pretty much everyone and their dog seemed to have mixed feelings on the subject, and honestly, that would have been my pick too. I don't think there's any clear-cut good or bad answer here. If you think I'm fighting way more for one than the other, well, you're not wrong. The only reason this video is so heavily slanted against the bad label is because that's the label I've seen cropping up more and more, and I felt the need to discuss it at this particular time. The comments under this poll by and large reflected the mentality of either,
I don't mind it in certain instances, but I have hard lines or areas that I question the intent behind aging them up.
A couple of people also completely ruled out things exclusively made for not safe for work content, but I do tend to believe a lot of this has to do with people being uncomfortable with erotica being created of characters that they generally like if they're not thinking of them in that way themselves, minor or otherwise. Which again, I stress is not a bad stance to have. If you don't like it, more power to you. Block it, avoid it, dislike it, do whatever you've got to do, but don't try to dictate others' actions or make claims to their moral fiber because of something you personally dislike. And don't call them a pedo, like my fucking god, that's such a serious accusation to lay on someone and it's just being thrown around with wild negligence nowadays. So, TLDR, stop looking to crucify people. Honestly, that's the crux of my video. As much as I'm totally down to debate and discuss this as it's a genuinely interesting topic and I think there's lots of points of views I haven't even considered yet, I can't shake this feeling that certain people are looking for perceivable, easy targets to label as evil and crusade against. For some of these people, I think it's genuinely done out of concern for what they perceive to be a very real problem, but for others, I think it's just them looking for a cheap buck on YouTube by jumping onto yet another bandwagon that they can grandstand on. There are very real evils in this world, very truly terrible people doing equally awful things, but all too often it can feel like we don't have any true impact on those powerful influences. So for many of us, there's precious little we can do to bring justice to those terrible monsters that would abuse and hurt real children. But we can readily find a fan creator online expressing their love for a character that they may have grown up with or simply relate to, or hell, might even be the same age as if they're still a minor, and make them the enemy instead. And I do understand this instinct to an extent. It sucks that we can't make the world better overnight, and it can feel so helpless. So seeing a strong, obvious impact against someone you perceive to have done wrong can feel like something tangible and good. But I assure you, all this will accomplish is making one more person a little more miserable and the internet a more inhospitable place. And the powers that be won't change a damn thing with what's actually wrong with the world. It's so much easier to attack your own than to make a meaningful change. But keep in mind that even if you might not feel like you can make an impactful, overwhelming change for good in the world despite your best efforts, you can contribute to the horrific, overwhelming changes for the worst in an individual's life without even knowing it. Right, sorry, this video ended in a bit of a spiral onto a larger topic, but I feel like many of these arguments stem from this frustration with the world and a genuine desire from many people to do the right thing and weed out evil. I just don't think it's being done in a constructive or healthy way, and that we're inventing new things to rally against that are easier to tear down in order to feel like we are enacting change in some way, only to get left with the ruins of countless other people that never intended to become our enemy. And I would like to wind this section down with the note directly from my ever-lovely editor Barb that helped me sound like less of a cretin in this video, and also had me stumbling over her big girl words, like ostensibly, fuck you Barb, I hate you, but take it away. And by that I mean me, reading your take, so let's get on with it.
Something important to remember for people who engage with any kind of fan work. It's easy to be a conscious consumer. Be mindful of the context of fan works. They come from independent creators, often with little worldly experience in publishing ethics. Major fan sites like AO3, Wattpad, YouTube, DeviantArt, or Tumblr exist to give a platform to emerging creators who are actively developing their craft. So play the role of a conscious consumer and share your thoughts, critiques, and concerns in a constructive way. And the only valid response to works that you feel cross an ethical boundary short of raising your concerns with the author in good faith is to report it to the site administrators, who can then identify and verify whether or not the work is in violation of the site rules. Online fandom is a lawless place, but out in these parts, we take care of our own.
Thank you for that, Bob. You are a gem, even though you put very big words in my script sometimes and I die trying to record them. I can't wait to see you again as soon as you're free from lockdown. Hell yeah, this script was written before you were free. I've seen Bob since now. But yeah, I think that final note is what I want people to actually take away from this more than anything else. We should take care of our own. Our young, our creative, our awkward, our cringy. The world is a very inhospitable place, and even more so to the marginalized or young, both groups of which tend to populate fandom more than any other. There's every chance that we'll fuck up or overstep at times, and there's nothing wrong with offering critique or correction. But let's be honest with ourselves, that's not what happens a lot of the time on the internet. So, if you happen to see a kid or some oblivious fan or artist that is acting within good faith being bombarded for a slight, perceived or genuine, extend a hand of support to them. Don't attack those that would harass others for enjoying fictional works and characters in their own way that hurts no one. Instead, extend your kindness and empathy and patience not only to the target of scrutiny, but to those responsible for such. I believe that more often than not, if you can give people a chance to be heard and show them true understanding and love, you in turn can be met with that same love. And I think that's actually a genuinely wonderful thing. Every time I'm at the end of the script and my sappy bitch comes out and I'm not crying, but we're right fucking there. Don't mind me. Anyway, alright, I think I have droned off long enough, kiddos. Once again, I want to thank my patrons for putting up with my shenanigans. Thank you for helping me have the time and materials I need to spend however many minutes this beast of a video will be. Short videos? Never heard of them here on this channel. I will have to stop making long videos at some point. Jesus. And thank you to everyone that answered my poll over on Twitter. It was actually really interesting. I kind of thought I knew where everyone's heads would be at, and I was surprised by where everyone seemed to be instead. I was not expecting quite as many people to be on a case-by-case basis like myself. And hey, you know, you could always just follow my Twitter. Tell me where your head is at with the next poll I put up. Just, you know, just saying. I try not to promote my bullshit too much. But, you know, like, I don't know, insert social media person saying, please click all the buttons and follow. I don't fucking know. Do what you do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Do what you do. Also, before I forget, I might jump onto a stream sometime after this video goes up if I have a headset, because my current microphone is being taken away from me for repairs. Oh, my baby, come back. But my point is, I would like to go into a live stream sometime after this video with maybe some Pokemon cards or something, specifically to talk about this subject. So like, feel free to drop by and let me know what you think. Hell, if someone can change my mind on certain points, that's God tier, so like, good for you. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I would love to be able to do that. And thank you again to Barb for editing the script for me. You are my unofficial lawyer. Barb is the one responsible for telling me I can't say torture porn at the opening of this video. You can all thank her for reining my dumb ass in. And thank you for everyone being so understanding for how long it took me to get this fucking video up. I got really sick and really busy, but we're here now. It's coming out, and hopefully I have new stills, which I was supposed to introduce at the beginning of this video, and I forgot. Well, stills. I will add in an introduction for the new stills if I have them, and if I don't have them, I look like an idiot. I should leave. I should definitely leave. Okay, with that, I am out. I need to go and touch some grass, iron out my spine, and you all need to take care of yourselves, my guys.